Hello friends, this is Rahul Saha. I have completed my MTech in Biotechnology from VIT University Vellore and have also been Research Associate in IIT Chennai. Today I'll be explaining to you about a very intriguing topic known as DNA replication in the prokaryotic system. Now to begin with, what is DNA replication? What is replication of course? Replication is just knowing about the process which deals with the duplication of DNA in the synthesis phase or S phase in the eukaryotes and in the cell cycle which doesn't have any realistic phase in the prokaryotic system. Now, this does what? Before DNA replication can be understood, one thing should be known is you need to transfer the DNA in order to transfer all the information to the specific daughter's DNA, or you can say the daughter cells, the descendants. And in order for that to happen, one needs to duplicate the DNA. Now, in order to understand prokaryotic DNA replication, now we need to know the method of DNA replication, and as we have understood and read about the experiments conducted by Matthew Michelson and Franklin Stahl, they came to a specific conclusive conclusion that the replication method in DNA is semi-conservative in nature, meaning that each strand of the DNA, of the parental DNA, serves as a specific template. Now that specific template DNA strand now will be used to make a new daughter strand. Now the specific Okazaki fragments are also being synthesized from the parental DNA strand which runs from the 5' to the 3' direction because there is no DNA polymerase in this entire world which can cause the polymerization activity from the 3' to the 5' direction. Now, the leading strand, it gets copied continuously because it uses the template which runs in the direction of 3' to 5' and thus the specific daughter strand DNA runs from the direction of 5' to 3'. Now DNA replication is also bidirectional. Now we'll get to that detail in the next video, how does the replication fork formation occur. And bidirectional means you go from the specific ORI sequence, is the origin of replication, in two directions from that specific sequence. That does two things. One is it increases the rate of you can say replication. It saves time as well for the replication to be completed. We know that in case of Escherichia coli, which is the gram-negative bacterium, which is taken as the model for the DNA replication, its generation time is about 20 minutes only. Now, this is a specific image showing what DNA replication is all about. Now, if you break down the DNA replication process, we can break it down into three steps. Number one is the initiation, number two is the elongation, number three is the termination. So in this very video, I'll be talking about the initiation process only. Now, what happens is whenever we want to initiate the DNA replication, we just cannot initiate from any specific site. We should be able to initiate from a very, very conserved sequence of site known as the origin of replication ORIC. You just cannot initiate from any random site because the proteins which will recognize the ORI are specific for that specific sequence, and those sequences are extremely conserved in nature. They're very, very consistent or canonical sequences which are highly selective for the proteins which are specifically participating in the initiation of replication process, both in eukaryotes and in prokaryotes. Now, if we come to this specific initiation event, what happens is we have multiple terminologies. One is the replisome, it is the entire enzymes bound to the complex of DNA, that is the replisome. And now we have something known as primosome. Primosome is nothing but a combination of DNA B, also known as DNA helicase, and DNA G, which is known as the RNA primase. Okay, it can also contain later on, the DNA polymerase III, the DNA gyrase, which is a type of DNA topoisomerase, then the single-strand binding proteins, the DNA ligase, and the various initiator proteins. Now, before getting into the initiation, I would like to acquaint you with one thing known as methylation. Now, what happens is initiation might require the full methylation in the E. coli of the E. coli DNA by the specific methylase enzyme. Then methylase, you can have DC methylase as well. Now, what happens is the initiation process should not occur twice. Now, how is it inhibited? Means once you have initiated the process of replication, it should not be repeating itself until and unless the entire process has been completed. So, what happens is, it is found in research that the initiation process could be inhibited by the hemimethylation of the DNA, meaning that the you can say the new strand after it has been synthesized, it is not methylated at that point in time. So the combination of the template DNA which is completely methylated and the new strand which is unmethylated, that combination is known as the hemimethylation or the hemimethylated pair of DNA. And that hemimethylation will not let the reinitiation happen unless that part of the DNA strand or that specific DNA strand, the daughter DNA strand, this non-methylated gets completely methylated. Now, this prevents the over-replication or you can say one and a half replication, two and a half replication, those types of specific unrequiring events is prevented by this specific, you can say, polymerase activity which is controlled by the methylation. The hemimethylated origins cannot initiate again until the damn methylase has converted them into fully methylated origins. The GATC sites at the origin they remain hemimethylated for approximately 13 minutes after the replication process. Now, this long period is unusual because at typical GATC sites elsewhere in the genome, remethylation begins immediately, like less than 1.5 minutes following the replication process. Now, one other region behaves like ORIC, the promoter of the DNA A gene. It also shows a delay before remethylation begins. Now, even though it is hemimethylated, the DNA A gene promoter is repressed, which causes a reduction in the level of DNA A protein. Now, what happens is, hence, the origin itself is inert, and production of crucial initiator proteins is repressed during this specific period. Now you can think of the initiator proteins. The first initiator protein is itself the DNA. Now the initiation of replication at the origin of replication, the ORIC, it commences with the formation of a complex that you can say ultimately requires a culmination of six different proteins. There is a DNA A, a DNA B, which is the DNA helicase itself, the DNA C, which is the helicase loader, the HU protein, which is a nucleoid associated protein, the you can say DNA gyrase, which is the topoisomerase of type 2 category, which uses the ATPs, and the single strand binding proteins which bind to the specific single-stranded regions after they have been or after the DNA has been denatured by the DNA helicase so that it will prevent or prohibit its renaturation via hydrogen bonding. Now, of the six proteins, the DNA A it draws our attention as the one uniquely involved in the initiation process. Now, DNA-B, I told you, is an ATP dependent ATPase helicase which has got a specific 5 to 3 prime helicase activity. Now, it is a hexameric protein and it uses the energy derived from the hydrolysis of an ATP molecule to break the hydrogen bonds present in the DNA. For each hydrogen bond breakage, one ATP is hydrolyzed. Now, DNA, as I was explaining to you, is an ATP binding protein. The first stage in initiation is the binding of the DNA A ATP protein complex to the fully methylated ORIC sequence. Now, this takes place in association with the inner membrane. DNA A is in the active form only when bound to the ATP, and DNA has intrinsic ATPase activity as well. This would do what? Which would hydrolyze the ATP to ADP and PI and thus release energy and inactivates itself in the process when the initiation stage ends. Now, this ATPase activity is stimulated by membrane phospholipids and also by the single-stranded DNA. Now, single-stranded DNA starts forming as soon as the origin of replication is open. Now, this is part of the mechanism which is used to prevent reinitiation of the replication. Now, the origin of the replication region, it remains attached to the membrane for about, you can say, one third of the cell cycle as another part of the mechanism again in order to prevent the reinitiation. Now, if we open the ORIC, you require a specific set of sequences. Those sequences are known as 9BP and 13BP repeats, also known as the 9 mers and the 13 mers. They are extremely conserved repeats. In many research papers, we will see as many as 11 9-mer sequences. Okay, but mostly 5 9-mer repeats are present and 3 13-mer repeats are present. Now, together, the 9-mer and 13-mer repeats they define the limits of the 245 BP ORIC. Now, what happens is the 4 to 5, mostly 5, 9 BP consider sequences are present on the right side of the ORIC and they provide the initial binding site for DNA ATP in an extended multimeric state, which is promoted by the accessory protein which binds to DNA ATP, which is known by the name as DIAA, which stimulates the cooperative binding of DNA. Now, what happens is DNA AATP binds cooperatively to form a helical central core around which ORIC DNA is wrapped. Now, DNA then acts at 3 18 is 13 BP conserved tandem repeats known as the 13 mers located on the left side of the ORIC. Now, what happens is in its active form, the DNA ATP transitions from the extended state to a compact form. In the process, it twists open the DNA strands in an unknown manner. This is still being researched to form an open bubble complex and stabilizes the single-stranded DNA altogether. Now, all the 313 BP repeats they must be opened for the reaction to proceed to the next stage. Now, altogether, you can say 2 to 4 monomers of DNA ATP bind at the origin, and after that, they release the DIAA. Then they recruit the two pre-priming complexes of the DNA B helicase, which are bound to the helicase loader known as DNA C ATP, so that there is one DNA B DNA C ATP complex for each of the two replication forks, because I have already acquainted you with the bidirectional replication process. Now, the function of DNAC is a very, very peculiar function. It's a very, very intriguing and ecstatic function. Its function is that of a chaperone to repress the helicase activity of DNAB until it is needed. Now, each DNAB DNAC complex consists of 6 DNAC monomers, because DNA-B is a hexameric ATPase. Therefore, 6 DNA-C helicase order monomers are needed to bound or to be bound to the hexameric DNA-B. Now, one thing is to be noted here very, very precisely and fundamentally is that the DNA-B or DNA helicase, it cannot open double-stranded DNA. What you have read in the books is completely wrong. It cannot open double-stranded DNA on its own, means it doesn't possess de novo DNA helicase activity as per the current research. It can only unwind DNA that has already been opened, already been unwound, already been denatured. In this case, it has been done by the DNA AATP. Now, DNA-B binding to single-stranded DNA is the specific penultimate signal which causes it to hydrolyze ATP and releases the DNA-C. And after the DNA-C has been released, only then the DNA-B can further utilize its ATPase activity unhindered and incessantly can go about the DNA replication process by causing the denaturation of the double-stranded DNA by hydrolyzing the specific hydrogen bonds between A and G and C and T, adenine, guanine, and cytosine, thymine. So that's about it in the initiation process. In the next video, I'll be explaining to you about the specificities of DNAG, which is the RNA primase, the topoisomerase, the types of topoisomerases, and I'll take you deep within the specificities and the complexities which are surrounding the specific stage of DNA replication elongation. Thanks a lot. Let's meet you in the next video.